I'd like to formally propose that articulated eye stalks are the best structure for visual sensory organs, at least for land animals and walking sea animals. It's just a really good idea, and I really wish humans had gone that route. I'm imagining a skinny trunk appendage with the housing for an eyeball. Take a chameleon's eye, extrude it another 2 inches, give it several more degrees of freedom like a short trunk. That's a general idea. It's a bit counterintuitive at first because there are cringe-inducing severing hazards to having eye stalks. It's hard to get past imagining going blind from the same mistakes that might otherwise only result in a pinched finger. It's a bit like having a tail. There's a heavy cost to maintaining the feature just due to it being so imminently breakable. So it better be worth it. Increased fragility is the big drawback. That's a big risk, but I think the advantages far outweigh it. First off, the most obvious. This is effectively a 360-degree binocular pan-tilt zoom system at a relatively low cost compared to having extremely large eyes or more than just two. The motor coordination is more complex than eye movements necessary for just rotating skull-locked eyes, but not overwhelmingly so. 6 to 10 extra degrees of freedom per eye seems manageable, though I have literally no basis for that other than it just feels right enough. Though it would definitely demand much more of our visual cortex to process feeds from two independently moving eyes and variable fields of view. But a mammalian vision system modified to create stable, consistent images from two sensors with a wide range of independent motion would just be plain awesome. The advantages are immense for anything that has to move in one direction while still monitoring other directions that they're not moving in for threats or resources. You have to sense the direction you're moving in, or you walk or fall in or fall off stuff. Looking elsewhere is more optional, but the option of not looking elsewhere is always risky. A wide field of view might seem more advantageous for prey than predators, but moving stalks can change that 360 field to a narrow one with extremely accurate depth perception in an instant. And most predators are still prey themselves, often while they're busy predating, so being able to switch modes is pretty good for everyone. I think there could be unexpected benefits from correlating independently articulated moving eyes that we just wouldn't even know about because no creature or anything like our brain structure, no creature with anything like our brain structure has eyes like that. Maybe there is some useful environmental data that can be correlated by oscillating interocular distances as the eyes pan or something. Or arranging the eyes vertically but upright in a top-bottom binocular configuration. I'm sure some multi-camera vision processing algorithms would offer some interesting insight into the potentials of separately moving eyes, but I don't know much about them. For every advantage articulated eye stalks create, they introduce a dozen more potential failure modes. Besides the massively increased potential for blindness due to severing, there are probably more spectacularly weird ways for all that visual processing to go wrong. So at this point it seems like eye stalks are objectively awesome, but still probably more trouble than they're really worth. But that's because we haven't considered what you don't need when you have eye stalks. An appropriate eye stalk could effectively replace the necessity of necks. That is huge. Necks are terrible, terrible structures. They are points of articulation that pass literally all the critical pathways of a body's system. The fact that you have to move your head to move your field of view more than a few degrees just seems like one of evolution's dumbest fails with horrific and far-reaching consequences. You remove the necessity of an articulated neck to move your entire head, and those critical pathways can be stationary, much better protected, and far less failure prone. I'll take the risk of blindness and crazy ocular disorders if I just don't have to deal with this stupid, vulnerable, seemingly over-articulated but surprisingly limited neck thing. Stalks could provide a perfectly functional alternative to their entire face, except the mouth. You could pop your audio organs on there and get all the advantage of binaural hearing, plus probably some really interesting signal processing potential from the independent positioning. I'm about 50-50 on olfactory organs. You could put some on the stalks or not. It might be better to keep those near to the mouth though. Plus, you put a nose on a stalk and it's either a trunk or an antenna. Eye stalks should be eye stalks. And and the identification and communication functions of a face could be done with a sufficiently expressive articulation of the stalks. So now you don't even really need a head at all. You can pack your whole brain somewhere less precarious and better protected than the top or the front. The best way to avoid head injury is to just forego having a head. You need to find a place for the mouth, of course, but there's plenty of viable real estate. You could work those into a short trunk lip assembly or just an upper torso mounted sphincter with teeth that feeds straight to the stomach. Just having a head doesn't necessitate breathing and eating through the same tube. That's another of nature's fails. And you really don't need to use the same air that interfaces directly with your blood to smell the environment. You could use some simpler independent bellow organ to move air over them. So it's really your choice if you do one tube or two for breathing and eating. There is probably some advantage in just having fewer orifices to maintain, though. In any case, you just have to. You just have a lot more options when none of the pathways have to pass through a stupidly articulated neck. So this all just seems like a giant win for all land and sea bottom dwelling life. For fish and birds, I'm not sure 100% of this applies. Vision in general just isn't as effective in water, so maximizing that sense may not be as effective as spending the energy elsewhere. And fish don't really have vulnerable and complicated articulated necks, so there's not much gain there. Even aquatic mammals probably wouldn't benefit much from the eye stalks, unless we consider the potential for articulated binocular sonar receivers or even independent directional ping generators and receivers. But today I'm talking about eye stalks. Also, I keep mentioning walking sea creatures, but I'm not sure why. It seems like walking shares the same features in either place, but the vision thing underwater works against it. I think I just included it because of stomatopods, or mantis shrimp. They are awesome, and they have a lot of the features of the eyes I'm talking about, plus hyperspectral vision and a bunch of other cool stuff. And somehow they're just so awesome, I thought it was okay to just invite all sea creatures with legs to the eye stalk party. It doesn't have to make sense. With birds, I just don't think eye stalks would do much for them. They do have the neck issue, but their neck articulation is pretty much 360 already, so they only gain real-time 360 vision, and I'm not sure they even need that. They don't really have as urgent a need to look in the direction they're moving at all times. If a bird in flight looks straight ahead and doesn't see a barrier in the forward direction, it can look elsewhere for a reasonable amount of time without updating. Feet don't really support a comparable autopilot feature. You can maybe close your eyes and walk across a salt flat or something similar, but most places on Earth, if you don't update your forward visual information pretty much constantly, something will remind you. Also, it seems like there's a drag issue with eye stalks. There are workarounds, but long protruding things they just don't seem conducive to graceful flight. Now, bats, they do fall in the same category as birds, but they already look insane and their flight isn't graceful at all. So I'm thinking let's just give bats eye stalks for the hell of it and see what happens. So, so I think I've made a fair case for the awesomeness of eye stalks in general. But I've got a bomb to drop on nature, if I could ever figure out how to drop it, or what that means. The bomb is called retractable eye stalks. Retractable eye stalks. I think that would just break evolution entirely. You would be unstoppable. It might be a little hygiene issue keeping your stalk cavities clean and all, but it's a fair price to pay to keep your eyeballs attached. Of course, the real question in all this is how much biological energy the eye stalks cost versus how much they save or help acquire. And I have zero credibility to make that calculation, but I'm not making a calculation. I'm sort of rationalizing a hunch, which is more fun and pretty much all I'm capable of. So that's my spiel about eye stalks.